On today's, on the other hand, we talk with someone working to help Arkansans come together and make our state better. Here's a sneak preview.
Things get polarized and partisan when they get to the state legislature and inside the Capitol building. But when you're talking in community, people have shared values and common, more common beliefs than you would think.
This is On the Other Hand, a podcast sponsored by Braver Angels Arkansas, where hope and common ground meet.
Each episode features community leaders from Arkansas and beyond, sharing stories and insights on how we can strengthen our relationships and our communities together. Hello and welcome to On the Other Hand. I'm your host, April Chatham Carpenter, and I'm here today with my co-host, Glenn White. And on our podcast, Glenn and I interview community leaders in Arkansas who help work towards solutions across various political and other divides, or who in other ways reach across various divisions within our community. And so we are excited about having our guest on today who works on political issues and policy issues. So Glenn, tell us who we have.
Well, hi, April. Thanks. Today we are happy to be speaking with Bill Kopsky. Bill is the executive director of the Arkansas Public Policy Panel. That's a statewide organizing and advocacy nonprofit that was founded in 1963 to advocate for civil rights. And later they expanded their work to involve low-income and rural communities. Right now, their activity, as I understand it, is helping organized groups to support goals such as better schools, safer neighborhoods, accountable government, and coalition building. I'm sure we'll hear more about that shortly. The panel is also actively involved in the campaign to ensure continued citizen ability to initiate ballot initiatives. So, Bill, welcome to On the Other Hand.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be here.
We're happy to have you here, Bill. Listen, let's start off by you telling us a little bit about what the mission is of the public policy panel that you head up.
Well, sure. So the panel was founded in 1963 by moms of school-age kids working on desegregation of public schools in the state and also on diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of more broadly. They would actually hold panel discussions with an African-American, a white, a Protestant, a Catholic, a Jew, and sometimes an Asian American when she was available. And they would go out and hold the kind of non-political conversations in communities all over the state about why diversity was important to them and what it was like to grow up with their particular background. And then they would take people's questions honestly from the audience. And that work kind of grew through the 60s. Ultimately, the panel helped create the first multicultural curriculum used in our public schools, which has now sadly been all disbanded. But it was a really important phase of our work. And then over time, our mission changed. Our mission now is really to organize community groups to promote social justice, economic justice, racial justice, and environmental justice all over the state, and to bring those groups together in the coalition so that we have a stronger voice in how our state's being led.
Okay, gotcha. It sounds like you cover a lot of bases then in the kind of advocacy and organizing work that you do, right?
We do. We work on the issues that our members elect for us to work on. So we don't work on just one particular kind of issue. We work on what our members want to accomplish. And so our goal, our focus is on helping bring people together, helping them create strategic plans, helping them navigate the political system to pursue their goals. And we're pretty experienced in advocacy and organizing would be probably our two biggest strengths.
That's great. It fits really well with something that's going on with Braver Angels nationally. Now, we have a fairly new CEO, and he really is pushing the idea of us trying to help basically kind of, if I understand it correctly, what you're doing, facilitate people locally to get more involved in civic and community-based activities to advocate for the kind of community and government that they want. So does that sound like some similarities there?
Yeah, that's 100% what we do. I mean, part of the way we approach it is we help folks do an assessment on what the challenges are to achieving their goals. I mean, one of the frustrating things in Arkansas is a lot of problems that we have in Arkansas are not new, and the kind of the powers that be have known that we're near last in the country in terms of economic development for low-income folks, or near last in the country for public health or public education. Those problems have been around in Arkansas forever. And so the question isn't, do we need to do something about it, but it's how do we do something about that? Because folks have known about those problems for a long time and just haven't done the work to solve them.
I see. Well, as you know, Brave Rangers, one of the things we've historically always emphasized is trying to encourage people to reach out across various divisions, especially political divisions, because that's a really hard thing to do, and to talk to each other with respect, because the idea is that when you do that, you can find some common ground and you can start to solve some of the problems that the community has. So we'll get more into that in a little bit, but before we do any further, tell me a little bit about your particular role as the executive director of the Public Policy Panel.
Well, I started as a community organizer, so I still have that sort of background. We have a team, an amazing team of 10 staff who are spread across the state. We have an incredible board. We have sort of a 501c3 arm, which is our kind of public education and organizing arm, which is the Arkansas Public Policy Panel. And then we have a sister coalition. It's a 501c4, which means that they can lobby at the legislature more and do ballot measures and things like that. And so the C4 is called the Arkansas Citizens First Congress. And so it also has its own separately elected steering committee, also just amazing leaders in that we're really lucky to work with. And the Citizens First Congress has a membership of about 40 community groups and faith groups and labor groups and advocacy groups from all over the state. Things as big as like the state, the Arkansas NAACP and the Arkansas Sierra Club, and then also just local community groups in communities like Gould or Marvel or Prescott, Arkansas, all have really strong local community organizations trying to make change locally. So we all connect together through the Citizens First Congress, and then our members in the Citizens First Congress elect our legislative platform that we then advocate for at the state level.
Well, Bill, we're really, it's great to hear about the work that you've been doing and are doing. And now that we know a little bit more about what the Arkansas Public Policy Panel is, I'd love to hear more about your early life and how it led to your current career and community activities.
Oh gosh, me personally, so I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and my parents are very Catholic. And so I kind of grew up with the social justice teachings in the Catholic Church and caring about equity and justice and economic justice, social justice, all those things are a really big part of the Catholic doctrine. And that really resonated with me from a very early age. And so actually the nuns that were at our church figured out early that I was very good at going door to door to help raise money for the Catholic Charities homeless shelter in Tulsa. So I was doing door to door canvassing, I think in third grade, with Catholic Charities volunteers raising money for the homeless shelter. And I've always been kind of interested in why the world works the way that it works and asking questions about that sort of thing. So after a while of doing that, I started asking, well, why do we have homeless people? And that was not nearly as popular as just raising money to serve the homeless people. And so causing problems even in third grade. And so that led to kind of a lifelong interest in kind of politics and policy and things like that. And in college, I did student organizing at the University of Colorado, where I attended college. And then when I graduated, I actually was looking forward to coming back to the South and had heard about the work of the Arkansas Public Policy Panel through some connections. And so I reached out to our director then and my old boss, Brownie Ledbetter, and just told her, I kind of just cold called Brownie and said, here's who I am and what I want to do. And she offered me a job after we talked for a long time. And so I moved down here. I thought I'd only be here a couple of years and go to graduate school. And that was this month, 30 years ago. So kind of wild how that worked out.
You never went on to grad school, I take
Never
it.
went on to kind of got a different kind of graduate degree, but yes, I never went on to graduate school. Brownie, I worked with Brownie for several years. And then when she retired, the board asked me to take over as executive director. I actually turned them down a couple of times before they finally talked me into it. So.
Well, I loved hearing how the connection to your early upbringing and the Catholic Church, and even in third grade. And I know the public policy values include the social and economic justice that you were actually interested in even as a young person. And some folks do react a little negatively to the idea of social justice, and yet some Arkansans are. They value some of the work that you do as well. But I'm wondering how you deal with the issue of people that might be opponents to that kind of advocacy work that you all do, or how you might even explain social justice to them.
We view social justice as sort of everybody having a fair shake and a fair opportunity. And I think that's a value that resonates really across all partisan ideological viewpoints. Unless you're one of those people that thinks you're genuinely superior to others, which I think is a small minority of the population. I think most folks think that everybody should have a fair opportunity. And so that's kind of where we plug into the kind of a social justice frame, and then studying, why is it that things aren't better than they are? I mean, again, I mentioned earlier, Arkansas has had these problems for centuries, really, of being last in the country in education and in health and in economic opportunity for low-income folks or working folks in general. We have one of the most backward tax systems in Arkansas. We tax poor people in Arkansas twice what we tax the wealthy. Those have been problems for generations. And so when we talk about social justice, we talk about, why can't we find solutions to these problems that literally everybody in leadership at state level knows about. And it's frustrating, but it's also rewarding. We find that when we get people involved, we really can make a difference. And I think that's one of the biggest aspects of our work, is simply convincing people that their advocacy can make a difference. Because so many people have lost faith that the politicians are just going to do what they're going to do, no matter what we as citizens want or need. And and what we've found is that that's not a terribly partisan sentiment. Things get polarized and partisan when they get to the state legislature and inside the Capitol building. But when you're talking in community, people have shared values and common, more common beliefs than you would think. The vast majority of our members are not political people. They don't think of themselves as, liberal or conservative or whatever. They're just, folk. And they're not terribly interested in politics, other than the fact that it sometimes interferes with their ability to have a healthy, high quality life that they want.
So you mentioned members. So how does a person become a member? I'm curious. I just don't even know enough about your organization to know membership means what?
Sure. So in the Citizens First Congress is really our membership vehicle, and it's a coalition of organizations. So it's 40, a little bit over 40 community groups working together. And so there you apply, an organization has to apply for membership. The steering committee of the Citizens First Congress has to approve that application. And then our members convene every other year in June. Actually, our convention is coming up next month, where our members will propose a platform of priorities that they want us to pursue. And that becomes our advocacy platform that we then work for the next several years to get adopted, either through the state legislature or through ballot measures, or sometimes at the local level. So that's that side of the membership. And then in communities, we organize individual community organizations like the Concerned Citizens of Prescott or the Gould Organizing Project in Gould, Arkansas. And in those, they're independent organizations from the panel, but they have their own individual membership. This, to us, a really key part of exercising kind of advocacy power is to make sure that you're accountable to the people in the community that you're advocating for. And so then the best way to do that is to actually have membership where those members elect who their leaders are. They elect what their priorities are. And you make sure that it's not someone coming in from out of state or out of the community and trying to dictate what happens in that community. It really should be up to the people in that community. And so having that local membership is really vital.
Do you have local memberships all over the state?
Right now, we are in 12 communities, mostly in South and East Arkansas, for where we're doing the local place, community organizing. And then the Citizens First Congress has membership all over the state.
Interesting. So I'd love to hear, is there a success story in any of those groups that you say, oh, wow, they really have made a difference at the local level?
Oh, gosh, so many. One of the most recent would be our leaders at the Concerned Citizens of Prescott. We started organizing with them over a decade ago. And originally in Prescott, the issue that our leaders wanted to organize around was the school board wasn't having public meetings. They were officially public meetings, but they were having them in a room that was so small that nobody other than the school board members could fit into. So they weren't truly public meetings. And so it took us campaigning for 6 months to get them to move to a larger venue so that the public could attend the meetings. But so they sort of went the other way and they moved into a giant auditorium and they were up on the stage. The audience was down in the audience and they did not have a sound system. So then they were having meetings that people could watch, but no one could hear. It's sort of crazy. So it took us another 6 months of advocating to get them to put a sound system in so that people could actually have a back and forth with their school board members. And it's kind of little things that you take for granted that's a fundamental right to attend a public a meeting like that. But it took a group campaigning around that. But since then, our leaders there have done just amazing things. They've built a literacy program now in collaboration with the school district. They've gotten the school district to adopt some conscious discipline policies to improve. It does two things. It improves school discipline, but it also reduces racial disparities in how discipline is issued out. So that's really important work. And then after years and years of campaigning, this year they finally got the school district to hire a significant number of African-American educators. The school district and the community are majority Black, but they had not very many Black educators in the school system. And so, but that took a long time and a lot of work for our leaders to do it. And they just had this stick-to-itiveness and, year by year kept making progress. And so it's an amazing success story.
So you mentioned us and you mentioned our leaders, and I want to just clarify, you're not talking about just a small group of people operating out of an office like where you are. You're talking about citizens in the community, right?
Yes, absolutely. So these are community leaders. I put myself right in the ranks with them, so that's why I say us. But yeah, these are local leaders in Prescott that I'm talking about, and they have monthly meetings with the Concerned Citizens of Prescott. They have their own elected board, and it's really, we at the panel give them support, but it's really them doing the advocacy and the driving for these changes, and it's their successes for sure.
And if another community person is listening to this from a community that's not one of the ones that's associated with the public policy panel, how would they go about getting something like this started in their own?
Well, so we have 5 community organizers that work on our staff. So they would just give us a call. People call us all the time and they say, this issue is happening in my community and I'm worried about it. And our response is, can you get, 15 people together to talk about it? And if they can, we'll send some staff there to help start that discussion with them and do some planning with them and figure out how to bring even a bigger part of the community together to talk about it and create some solutions. But whether we're helping you or not, that's the way to do it. If you can't bring people together, we wish them luck, but it's really difficult to make kind of systemic changes in communities when you're operating as a kind of a lone wolf or a small niche group. You really have to bring the whole community in and get them involved in order to be able to make some changes in the community that you need.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So one of the things I was going to ask you, Bill, was about the current issues that you're working on. It sounds like if you talk about the Citizens First Congress, that could be a long list, and we don't need to go into that many details. It's community specific. Do you have some way of kind of saying what are the broad issues that the panel itself is focusing on?
Sure. Our membership tends to focus on we call them buckets of issues. So we tend to work on civil rights issues, voting rights and democracy issues, election reform kind of things like that, making sure everybody's vote counts and that sort of thing. We work on public education and making sure we have quality schools for our kids to go to. We work on economic justice to make sure that there's opportunity for people to make a living and to do well. And then we work on environmental and public health issues, kind of broad buckets. Two of the biggest issues that we're currently working on are state ballot measures. One is we're part of two separate coalitions that are working on each of these. So one of them is a democracy ballot measure to protect our citizens' ability to put a ballot measure on the ballot to have a say in the laws that affect us. Arkansas is one of only 15 states that has the kind of ballot measure access that we have. And it's really a vital tool that Arkansas voters have used for over 100 years to make progress on key issues and to hold our legislators accountable. But that process has been under attack by those legislators. They've introduced dozens and dozens of bills to restrict citizens' ability to put ballot measures on the ballot. And so we're responding this time with the Arkansas Ballot Measure Rights Amendment that eliminates the political interference we've been getting from the legislature and also enhances citizens' ability to put ballot measures on the ballot, to sign ballot measure petitions, and to go ask their fellow citizens for signatures on those ballot measures.
I just wanted to ask a quick question about that because I wonder what the hesitancy is, and I haven't studied this to know, in other states and in our state, why is there such a negative connotation of ballot initiatives coming from the people from a state legislative perspective?
Yeah, I was going to say, so ballot measures are wildly popular with voters, so there's not a negative perception with voters, but it's, legislators, they like to control the agenda. And so we started to really see pushback against ballot measures in Arkansas. In 2016, Arkansas passed a $11 an hour minimum wage. We passed it with 68% of the vote. So a huge, completely nonpartisan electorate voted for that minimum wage increase. And yet 6 weeks later, the Arkansas legislature tried to repeal that. And so that's what we're contending with. That the Arkansas legislature, there's 100 members of the House, there's 35 members of the Senate, then you have the governor's office, and then you have, 700 or 800 corporate lobbyists running around the Capitol. And that's who controls politics in the state. And those folks don't really trust voters to make decisions on their own. And so we've seen all kinds of proposals in 2022. The legislature proposed a ballot measure itself that would have amended our Constitution, that would have allowed only a 40% minority of voters to block approval of a ballot measure and requiring a 60% majority to approve. And Arkansas voters rejected that with 60% of the vote. There's an overwhelming rejection of that measure, which was great. We worked hard on that campaign to make sure voters understood the issues in that. So what we saw this last legislative session is instead of the legislature seems to have figured out if they propose something to the people are going to reject it because voters like the ability to hold legislators accountable. So the politicians this time introduced over 20 bills restricting access to the ballot, and they passed 13 of them. So some of the bills were truly ridiculous. So things like requiring a canvasser asking people for a signature to read the entire ballot title to somebody before they can sign it, as though they're not smart enough to read it on their own or make their own informed decision. And so that would normally it would take 2 or 3 minutes to get a signature from somebody at the farmer's market or wherever. This takes that and makes it a 10 to 15 minute exchange, and most people just don't have the time for that. And I think the politicians knew that if they slowed the process down that much, it makes it nearly impossible for citizens to get measures on the ballot. So we've challenged a set of those laws that the legislature passed in court, and we've won a federal injunction blocking them as First Amendment violations to citizens' ability to petition their government. But we ultimately don't want to put all of our eggs in the courts doing the right thing basket. And so we also worked with a whole broad coalition called Protect Our Rights. It's been around since 2019. It has several key Arkansas organizations in it. And we drafted the Arkansas Ballot Measure Rights Amendment that protects folks' fundamental right to sign, collect signatures for, or propose ballot measures. It eliminates political interference with the process. It also creates some really important due process protections for voters. For example, right now, if the state throws your signature off of a ballot measure petition for any reason, and they throw a lot of signatures off, they do not tell voters if their signatures have been disqualified. So you have no idea of whether your signature was actually counted or not. Our measure will require the state to notify voters when their signature is thrown out and give that voter 10 days to come and either sign again or fix whatever problem caused the signature to be thrown out. So those are the kinds of due process protections that Arkansas voters really need to exercise, again, what we view as our fundamental right to have a say in how our government works.
So to get an amendment like that passed, what would have to happen?
You have to collect 91,000 signatures, just short of 91, but it's pretty close to 91,000 signatures. This year, the deadline is July 3rd, and the signatures have to be from Arkansas registered voters. And then the Secretary of State approves those signatures, and once they do, they place it on the ballot for the November general election, and then voters get to have a say in whether they think the proposals are a good idea or a bad idea. Arkansas voters have passed some really important reforms that frankly, the legislature just never would have passed. So things like all of our campaign finance laws, all of our campaign finance laws, our ethics laws in Arkansas, term limits laws, all passed by citizen-initiated ballot measures. Minimum wage in Arkansas passed by citizen-initiated ballot measures, medical marijuana. And so there's certain things where one of the reasons why we like ballot measures is most of these issues are not very partisan when you're talking to voters in the public. So again, like the minimum wage increase passed with 68% of the vote, which means that wasn't just Democrats voting for it. That was an overwhelming number of Republicans voting for that as well. And so like this ballot measure rights amendment that I just described to you, it actually polls higher with Republican voters in our polling than it does with Democratic voters, but it enjoys 80% support among voters. And so our challenge right now is getting enough signatures by the July 3rd deadline to get that on the ballot before voters.
I know we will go on to other topics, but how would a person sign that if they wanted to?
Sure. They could go to protectarrights.org and they can see signing locations all over the state. We have about 1,000 volunteers out collecting signatures. And our volunteers would absolutely love to see you and help you sign and learn more about the measure. On that website, protectarrights.org, you can also read the amendment and in its entirety and see a bunch of other information there. You can also volunteer. These are volunteer-driven campaigns, and so we really need folks that, even if you're only going to help us with 10 signatures or 20 signatures, that makes a big difference. Some of our volunteers are volunteering, to do shifts at fairs or farmers markets or whatnot. That's also helpful, but really anything that you can do to help would be greatly needed and appreciated.
Thank you.
So, as you know, with Arkansas's Braver Angels organization, we're trying to focus on helping people reach across divisions and to look for common ground, because oftentimes when you have people talking in a respectful, genuine way, you find there's more common ground than you might have expected. So I wonder if, similarly, the public policy panel, you guys are there any issues around now that you found some unexpected common ground with people or organizations that might normally have not aligned with the panel's positions?
For sure. I mean, both of the ballot measures that we're working on right now, the one that protects the ballot measure process and also the one that strengthens our public school system, both of those measures, again, they poll at 78% with Democrats, 77% with Republicans. I mean, they're almost completely nonpartisan. And what we have found is that most issues in the state, most people in Arkansas know that we're not doing enough to help our kids in schools, and they want to do more. Most people in Arkansas know that our economy is not working for working folks and that we need to make some changes around that. Across partisan divides, they really become polarized when they get to the legislature, which is why having a citizens path to bypass the legislature and hold them accountable is so important. Voters, again, overwhelmingly support, the right to vote, the right to have a say in ballot measures. But Glen, these issues are not partisan. And so, again, what we find when we work in the community is that party affiliation almost never comes up. I mean, folks just are not, they're not political beings. They're just trying to, do better for their family, get to their job, get their kids to school, take care of the necessities of life, have a vacation once in a while, take care of their health, take care of their parents. All of those issues are what's driving people that we work with, and not, whether the red team or the blue team has control in the state capitol.
It is a very polarized environment now, as you well know, and there's a lot of movement against people getting together and working and compromising. Are there any examples you can cite about what you're doing to facilitate collaboration across partisan lines or ideological lines? Clearly, from what you've already said, that happens with some of the initiatives and the legislative efforts because they are favored by people on both sides. Anything else you can say about what y'all are doing to try to address the problems with the polarized environment we face now?
Sure. I mean, again, our local community organizing is really critical to that, because what we're doing is bringing people together to talk about problems in their community and what the solutions are. We're not asking them, again, to make a political statement around that. We're just simply trying to solve problems. And the Arkansas legislature actually has a pretty rich tradition of working in nonpartisan ways that are really driven by local needs. That's changed dramatically. As you said, things have become so polarized, and the politics in Arkansas have become sort of nationalized. And so, when people run for the state legislature now, they're not talking nearly as much about how do we bring economic development to Newport, Arkansas, or to Ouachita County, Arkansas, or whatnot. Instead, they're talking about these national issues that, frankly, the Arkansas legislature doesn't have much to do with. And so we tend to focus, our members are focused on solving local problems and finding solutions to those. And those problems and those solutions are nonpartisan, again. And so, I'd say nearly all of our work is focused on bridging those divides. And we're not a political organization either. We don't endorse candidates. We don't take positions. We are political because the solutions to a lot of our issues require political action, but we are not partisan.
That's it for part one of our conversation with Bill Kopsky. We'll pick things up right where we left off for our next episode, so be sure to join us for part two.
If you liked what you heard today, share the episode with a friend and help us spread stories of bridge building across Arkansas. And remember, On the Other Hand offers dozens of interviews like this one. You can find On the Other Hand in your favorite podcast app or on the podcast page of the Braver Angels Arkansas website at arkansas.braverangels.org.
On the Other Hand is sponsored by Braver Angels Arkansas, a community of citizens working together to bridge the partisan divide and build a stronger, more connected Arkansas.
From your host, Glenn White
and April Chatham Carpenter,
join us in working to make our relationships and communities better.